though. We've got a Fireside Chat where we're looking at the factory of the future. So how does this concept look? How is data driving that transformation? How does that improve supply chain operations? And how does that improve that all-important customer experience? My guest is Tim Long, Global Head of Manufacturing in Snowflake's go-to-market team. Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, we've got an awful lot to get through and not much time to do it in, so we'll crack on if you don't mind. And really, I want to take things back to basics a little bit to begin with. For you, what are some of the key technologies we're talking about that are really driving the development of this factory of the future, if we want to call it that?
Well, there's really so many different technologies that manufacturers are looking to provide efficiency gains and drive better quality into the products that they make. One of which is not necessarily new. Of course, robotics are everywhere within the manufacturing process and have been for some decades now. But what is new is the concept of autonomous robots. And so we expect to see many more of those types of vehicles operating within the factory itself to improve the efficiency of moving product from one step to the next.
So those are the real keys. Yeah. Sorry, do carry on.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so additionally, we see quite a bit of investment in making the lines themselves more adaptable or modular. The idea of being able to swap in and out different products based upon volatility on the demand side of the supply chain. And then, of course, additive manufacturing continues to grow. Things like 3D printers being used extensively within some of the automotive industry. And so we see that as additional advancement. And then lastly, I'd say, smarter everything. And this is really being driven by artificial intelligence, driving, helping our workforce be smarter, giving them better access to information or, tools, smarter processes in the shop floor that learn to adapt to, variance within the process or the materials, and smarter energy consumption, optimizing, how the processes actually consume energy, and minimizing, the impact to our environment as a result.
Now, the expression "smarter everything", that's already one of my favorite expressions of the day. That needs to be on everything. That's the go-to answer for everything, it feels like. But for you, what I want to do is really link how the factory of the future concepts can really improve supply chain operations. Because for people who might still be just dipping their toe into some of this technology, how can these concepts link to real tangible supply chain improvements?
Yes, I'd say that at Snowflake, I have the pleasure of meeting with hundreds of manufacturers around the world, and I can tell that they're also very focused on improving control of their supply chain. And one of the ways that they're doing that is by looking to establish real-time data collaboration with partners in their ecosystem. Specifically sharing data with their suppliers, or their suppliers sharing data with them, sharing data with their customers. In the example here I'll share is in the high-tech industry, manufacturers are looking for ways to share the test data from the components they make into the OEM customers of theirs that may sell something like a network, router or something like that. They're looking to share data to reduce the time it takes to qualify new products and bring them to market. And then so much of manufacturing is operated in this mixed world of first-party versus third-party manufacturing or outsourced manufacturing. And they're looking, these types of relationships, they're using data sharing and collaboration as well to bring the data from the shop floor at a subcontractor back to the designing or the owning company, trying to find efficiencies and ways to improve yield through a collaborative nature. So that's a big place that we see just a ton of interest from our customers. And of course, Snowflake's data sharing and data collaboration capabilities are helping to improve that. And then I'd also say that as it relates to supply chain performance, the first thing you have to do to improve your supply chain performance is be able to see it. And so bringing data from your ERP systems all together in one place. So many manufacturers have multiple ERP systems that they've collected over the years of mergers and acquisitions. And so Snowflake provides a place where they can bring all those data together very efficiently and in near real time, so they can really have that visibility. And then lastly, I'll just say that some of these concepts around so many different data providers in the world who are monitoring the supply chains, watching for things like supplier disruptions, things like transportation congestion, or forecasting increased prices in raw materials. There is expertise that exists within these data providers, and all of them come together in Snowflake's marketplace, where our customers are tapping into those insights to get ahead of the market when it comes to risk and disruption.
Because some of these changes and these anticipated changes, they are huge. They are genuine game changers. We're almost going back to the days where we went from steam power to electric power to computerized. It's the next one of those changes, isn't it? But with that brings challenges. For you, how do you see those challenges? What are those challenges, and how can they be overcome?
Yes, well, I couldn't agree more. We are at this moment where we are observing, what's being called the fourth industrial revolution, this idea of step function improvement due to the technologies that we now have in our toolbox. But fundamentally, this type of transformation is all about change. And it's really at this point, my perspective is that AI is the easy part. Right. We have data now. We have tools and technologies like Snowflake to bring data together. We have all sorts of algorithms in the AI toolbox, and finding a winning algorithm on that data is actually easy. What's challenging is changing the business. And that fundamentally is about people and how to inspire people to change or take risks to do something differently. How to make sure that you have the right skills and understanding across your enterprise, from the C-suite down to the operators on the shop floor, who really are seeing this transformation as a necessary next step in the success of their company.
Because I guess the challenge might be, if you're a CTO, or you're in charge of the supply chain operation, you can see the benefits of embracing this fourth industrial revolution, which is a much better way of phrasing it than the phraseology I use. If you're managing up to try and encourage people to take on board these ideas, or managing down to the shop floor, how can people go about doing that? Because you've got to prepare the workforce and the business for a change of this size.
Yes, very important. And, before joining Snowflake, I was in practitioner roles for, the first 20 years of my career. And as a data leader, I took it as my own responsibility to make sure that all levels of the organization had an understanding of what data can do for the business. And that begins at creating awareness and understanding of what is, demystifying what is artificial intelligence, separating the hype from the reality, helping people relate to how these things can be used within their business processes. And then also, providing best practices of working with data, building robust governance processes that not only, prevent risk with data, but also enable the organization from all levels to work with that data and learn from the insights. So I think investments in overall, awareness programs, understanding programs, data literacy, all of those are crucial as we enter this next chapter of manufacturing.
Because I'm sure you've got many, many examples of when things have gone very well and success stories from this kind of implementation. But I just want you to pick out one, which is one that leaps to mind where you think, this has been implemented and it has made such an exciting change, and everyone involved in the project got an enormous buzz out of seeing the scale of that change. What example, what case study would you reach for straight away?
Yeah, it's tough to pick just one. I think one that I'm most excited about as it relates to Snowflake's latest capabilities, at least, given that's my perspective of the world, is a semiconductor manufacturer who has recently, found a way to consolidate all of their machine learning processes directly into Snowflake. And the benefits of that is it's helped them improve the yield of their product, but it's done so in a really interesting way. One way is that it's shortened the time it takes to run those processes, because the processes now run directly where the data live inside Snowflake. But the second way that's really interesting is that they've been able to provide access to democratize those advanced analytics tools to a broader audience base, because it is in an environment that's much simpler to work in than some of these complex worlds of infrastructure and big data environments. Within Snowflake, it makes it all very simple. So I'm really excited to watch them continue to invest in this idea of bringing the analytics directly to the data and make those tools available to more and more people throughout their enterprise.
Looking at things like that, though, how important is it that no one rests on their laurels? When you've got a great platform and a great way of working with that platform, and a business is using that platform to its maximum potential, how do you keep an attitude of continuous improvement, though? Because you can't settle and go, yep, we've done that. It's sorted. It's fixed for the next 20 years. How do you keep the continuous improvement going?
Well, I think that you have to build a culture where you continue to focus on innovation and taking smart, calculated risks. Because in competitive industries, especially, if you do rest on your laurels, you'll be out of business pretty quickly. I mean, think about just in the last 3 months, how 3 to 6 months of how much change that we're experiencing as it relates to search. Search for the internet has been something that everybody has found incredibly valuable for decades now. And now with these large language models and generative AI, it's a complete change in how we think about asking questions of the world. And so that type of innovation, everybody, manufacturers included, need to continue focus on what's next in that journey. Build from the success you've had in your past. Take the value that you've generated in these implementations and put that back into that next generation of investment to make sure you're staying ahead of the curve, ahead of your competitors with the industry, and continue to win.
But looking at data cloud technology here, when we're implementing this in the manufacturing space, how can the data analytics and the AI that's involved in that really give an advantage? What examples have you seen of it really making a difference to a supply chain operation?
I'll give you a great example from Honeywell that we'd announced just recently, where Sheila Jordan, their chief digital officer, had talked about how she envisions a world without Excel. Something so simple conceptually, but difficult in practice. And what Honeywell has done, with Snowflake, is been able to consolidate 33 different ERP systems into one environment and provide near real-time visibility across their entire supply chain. Specifically, Honeywell used that data to better understand inflation impact across their 3 to 4 million different SKUs that they produce. And they use those insights to pinpoint exactly the source of their rising costs and use that information to improve how they source those materials or components, finding potentially lower cost alternatives, or in some cases, finding a very dynamic and intelligent and elegant way to pass those costs on to their customers. So that's an example that I think is really interesting and almost every organization can relate to.
That's fascinating, though, because how granular can those savings be with that kind of insight? How closely can they really drill down into what those costs are?
Well, I think that's the key, and that's something that you cannot do in Excel. And so the idea is bringing all of those data. You think of 3.5 million different products and all the materials that go into those products and where they exist around the world and where you sourced them from around the world and what the transportation costs are. All of that data exists within different systems today, and Snowflake is a means to bring that data together and give you the scale required to trace or to connect all of that in one view to truly, help you prioritize where your analysts, your supply chain analysts, where they're spending their time to mitigate the biggest risk or to offset the biggest impacts.
Because one thing you touched on a moment ago is the constant headache of legacy systems, because as you say, if there's been takeovers or amalgamations or anything like that, you end up with so many different systems. And I'm going to be nosy here because as the host, I'm allowed to. How difficult can it be when you're going into a situation where there are a whole host of different legacy systems that maybe don't talk to each other or work together that you're trying to bring under one banner? How much of a challenge can that be?
Well, it can be an incredible challenge for some systems, but at Snowflake, we're trying to make that as easy as possible for our customers, and we're doing that through a variety of ways. One way that we're doing it is by building strong partnerships with technology companies that have expertise and skills in bringing data from these legacy systems. Whether it's specialty, partners that work really well with acquiring data from SAP environments or Oracle or you name it, or technology partners who, provide capabilities to bring data directly from the shop floor, from the OT environments, define, assets at the edge, and then stream those directly into Snowflake. Those partnerships are core to our success, and we continue to develop those based upon what we see the needs from our customers.
For you, going back to data cloud solutions, in what ways can those solutions help manufacturers really adapt to changes in the market, changing demands and changing customer needs? How do they let people become more agile in that supply chain space?
Yes, well, I think agile is the key. It's my perspective that speed beats everything. So the ability to pivot quickly when market conditions change is critical to manufacturers. So driving speed into the process itself, shortening cycle times, reducing the amount of inventory that you're carrying, all of those are data-driven initiatives. So that's one way. And then the second is predictability. The better you can predict the likely outcomes, and I don't mean just predict, pick one value. I mean, predict the probability of what could happen using AI and machine learning type techniques, the better you can plan for those possible scenarios. So driving ML into all forecasting processes, using more advanced methods in planning or matching supply and demand, because recognizing that variability will at some point enter that process and make it difficult to solve for just a single outcome. You really need to think in totality of all the different possible outcomes. And that means you need the analytics and the data and the scale to do that. And so I think those are two ways that manufacturers are helping to adapt in this continued supply chain volatility space that we're in today.
Tim, we've just got a couple of minutes left, but there's a couple more questions I do want to get through. One thing I think is key is whether the solutions are tailored. They're not just off the shelf, they're a tailored solution to that customer. For you, whenever you're using these kind of solutions, how important is it that the customer or the client is very much involved in that solution and it is tailored to be right for that particular environment?
Yes, I mean, everything that we do at Snowflake is, driven in the customer's best interest. And I think in terms of tailoring, you have to provide an environment that's flexible, such that the customer can really implement the things that are core to their particular strategy and what they need to do to be successful. And from us, one way that we help our customers do that is by through our model of only charging for consumption of our products. So our customers can get in small on Snowflake, prove their ROI, and then invest further. And that's why we have such a great customer retention rate. So I think it's about providing the flexibility. And for my role in particular at Snowflake, it's about providing that industry perspective, what we see our other customers doing, and offering that industry guidance and consulting back to our customer base to help them, pursue the path that's going to be most productive for them.
And one last question, if I can, Tim, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. And it's a question I love, because whenever you are going into a business or an organization and suggesting change, there are always going to be doubters. There are always going to be people who say, well, this is how we've always done it, and it doesn't need to change. It's not broken. How do you go about working with those doubters, whether it's the solutions you offer, other businesses offer? How do you go about turning those doubters into people who believe in the project?
Well, there's a lot of techniques that I found to be effective there, but sharing just the one I think that's most critical here with you is you need to bring them along in the journey, and they need to feel like they're a part of it. That's the core, that's the key. And the way to do that in implementing, radical change like AI, driven processes is you need to include their expertise as an input into the design of the system. Ask for their hypotheses. How does this work in practice? What do you think is important? What do you think of this data here? Does that look right to you? And you bring them along through that journey as you layer in complexity of analytical technique to get to your end state. And I found that to be the single most critical way to bring those doubters along with you and turn them into believers.
Lovely stuff. Tim, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed it. We talked about the fourth industrial revolution, as you say. That was a far better way of phrasing it than I was. And smart everything. That is the solution to everything. Thank you, Tim, so much. Really enjoyed your company.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.